Welcome, football fans. Buckle up for another hard-hitting episode of Player 54 Podcast, a show focused solely on the XFL. From a sunny Southwest Florida studio, here's your host, Michael Lathrop.
Hello, football fans. This is episode 49, 365 days down, so much more to come. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Royal Retros by 503 Sports. Royal Retros are the king of throwbacks. Royal Retros by 503 Sports provides a line of merchandise from legendary defunct leagues such as the XFL 1.0. If you have always wanted to get yourself a quality Las Vegas Outlaws He Hate Me or Los Angeles Extreme Tommy Maddox jersey, perhaps even an OG XFL's team's t-shirt, we have you covered. Simply click on the link provided in the show's description and notes and enter the code LETSTALKXFL at checkout to receive 10% off your purchase. I would like to take a moment to share, during this episode's recording, we have reached Player 54 Podcast 1-year anniversary. It is hard to believe that a year has passed since recording our first episode. So much has happened during this time. What began as a solo affair of talking into the ether as Let's Talk XFL eventually expanded to multiple appearances by contributor Brian Roth. From there, the show evolved into its intended format of weekly guests from around the XFL community and more. A few months ago, we experienced rebranding as Player 54 Podcast with hopes of establishing a better relationship with the XFL. What our followers and listeners may not know is throughout this journey, I have experienced several personal challenges, including grieving the loss of my mother, adjusting to new life with my fiance 1,400 miles away from our family and friends, and ongoing struggle with diverticulitis, which has included multiple hospital stays, surgery, and more. I am grateful for everyone who has joined us on this journey and continues to support the show. I wouldn't be able to do this without my team in the background, Melissa, Brian, and Rich, as well as my affiliation with XFL Newsroom, who has been vital in providing the show with a platform on its website and played an important role in booking our first guests, James Larson and Zach Keilman. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Now, time to kick off year 2. This week, we have a fantastic show. There are several XFL developments to cover, and we are blessed with 2 great guests. Later in the show, I will be joined by quarterback Justin Arth to discuss his journey, XFL Texas Showcase, XFL Washington, D.C. workout, and so much more. I will also be joined by broadcaster, host, and writer Rod Pedersen to discuss Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's meeting with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment Chairman Larry Tanenbaum, as well as ongoing Canadian Football League and XFL rumors. But first, we have those developments to cover. So, let's get to it.
Did you hear the news? Did you hear the news?
On October 12th, the XFL announced its partnership with the Indoor Football League. Per the league's press release, it is a wide-ranging player personnel partnership. The deal provides the framework for transferring players between leagues and the opportunity for players released from XFL teams to be transferred to Indoor Football League rosters. The 2 leagues will also work together in scheduling joint tryouts, sharing video, and game films. Then, on October 20th, a picture of cornerback KJ Sales with XFL St. Louis wide receiver coach Ricky Prohl went viral on Twitter. In the photo, Prohl was holding a binder with the St. Louis Battlehawks logo on it. This alone does not confirm the Battlehawks branding's return. However, after leaked XFL shop images, recent XFL St. Louis workouts having players wearing Battlehawk blue shirts, it just seems to tip the scale in favor of the Battlehawks branding to be back in 2023. Also, on October 20th, 2 XFL Town Hall events were shared via social media. First, XFL News Hub contributor and Dreams Begin Within the X podcast host Jay Noakes posted an image of his invitation to the XFL San Antonio Town Hall, which has been rescheduled for November 2nd. Second, XFL and USFL fans administrator Brett Tears posted an image of his XFL St. Louis Town Hall invitation, which is now scheduled for November 1st. Then on October 21st, XFL Communications Department social media accounts posted the Nick Novak Specialist Showcase participant roster, which was held on Sunday, October 23rd. Without sharing the entire roster, We must note that former Tampa Bay Vipers tight end Nick Truesdell is listed as a long snapper participant, as well as a former St. Louis Battlehawk punter, Marquette King. I find the league posting the Specialist Showcase roster a bit surprising. When I attended the XFL Florida Showcase in Bradenton, media members were giving rosters for the DC and Florida showcases. However, we were instructed to not publish or share it. Our public relations representative claimed the XFL wanted to protect their interests from other leagues. Also, on October 21st, Markcast host Reed Johnson posted an image of his invitation to the XFL Seattle Town Hall, which has been rescheduled for November 9th. As the day went on, 2 more images of XFL Town Halls went viral. XFL Orlando's is November 1st, and XFL Washington, D.C.'s is November 3rd. Despite not having Arlington, Houston's, and Las Vegas Town Halls, this is encouraging and vital to the league's ramp-up to 2023. A segment of the XFL fan base believe this is when the league's branding for each of the 8 markets will be announced. Unfortunately, I do not agree. Seeing these are private events and are scheduled for times which are not ideal for maximizing media coverage, I believe the branding announcement will be done before these events. But you don't have to take my word for it. Here are the scheduled time slots. Orlando from 6 to 8 p.m. San Antonio from 6 to 8 p.m. Seattle from 6 to 8 p.m. St. Louis from 5 to 7 p.m. Washington, D.C.'s from 6 to 8 p.m. In addition to these events bringing hardcore fans together to meet team coaching staff and personnel, I believe this is where the team uniforms will be unveiled. Also, on October 21st, XFL Arlington's head coach Bob Stoops dropped some information on his Coach Bob Stoops YouTube account. Here is the clip from when he discusses the XFL.
Last question for you has nothing to do with college football. It has to do with all the excitement around the XFL, Coach. What can you tell me about what's going on behind the scenes for the XFL?
Yeah, just our entire staff, really everybody has been just evaluating players in the player pool. You know, different players are opting into to the player pool to be drafted. And that's going to continue, you know, and I imagine even after our initial draft, we may have a supplemental draft later. So right now we're scheduled to do our draft in mid-November, around the 16th, I believe it is, in Las Vegas. And then we'll start practice not until January. Now, again, not sure yet if we'll have any supplemental drafts before January, but I'm sure that's always a possibility. But practice starts in January, and the first game will be the weekend after the Super Bowl.
All right, going to be a lot of fun watching you on the sidelines again there in the XFL. Well, Coach, thank you so much. And remember, guys, for videos anytime, just tap on the video link. For Hall of Fame football coach Bob Stoops, I'm Brad McMullen.
So, we have more confirmation. The XFL Draft will be held in Las Vegas on November 16th. Coach Stoops also mentions camps will begin in January, as well as there's a possibility of more supplemental drafts before then. Then, on October 22nd, American National Combine held the XFL Supplemental Showcase in San Diego for players who were on the waiting list. XFL coaching staffs and personnel were in attendance to evaluate talent for November's draft. Then, on October 23rd, the XFL held its Specialist Showcase in partnership with Novak Kicking and Consulting in San Diego. The event was specifically for kickers, punters, and long snappers. This was the last scheduled showcase before November's draft in Las Vegas. As I have previously mentioned, I will now be joined by quarterback Justin Arth to discuss his football journey, XFL Texas Showcase, and XFL Washington, D.C. workout, and more. Welcome, Justin. I appreciate taking the time to join the show to discuss your football journey, XFL Showcase, and your recent XFL Washington, D.C. private workout.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, Michael, for having me on. I mean, it's been a whirlwind of a journey thus far, so I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I think you have a very interesting journey, and I try to focus on players with a not-so-cookie-cutter pathway. You played your collegiate ball at NAIA Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth, Texas. Can you walk us through your recruitment process from high school and what your college football experience was like?
Yeah, so it started off very cookie cutter as it could get. I was actually recruited by multiple Division I schools. I had a PWO or a preferred walk-on for those that don't know what a PWO is, at Baylor. I was thinking about taking that, but my biggest offer was an actual scholarship to be at Vanderbilt. And then a lot of your kind of like lower Division I FCS schools like Houston Baptist, which I've seen today has changed their name to Houston Christian University or something. But at UAB, Georgia State, schools like that. And so going into my senior year, I was thinking, okay, my mom works for Georgia State and to go there, stay home. But then at the same time, like UAB shut down the football program, and that would be a perfect thing to step into and say, hey, we're building a program from ground zero after the whole university shut everything down. And so I was thinking between those two, or heck, I grew up a big UGA Bulldogs fan or Georgia Bulldogs fan. So go to Vanderbilt and prove to Coach Mark Richt at the time why you should have recruited me. But ended up breaking my collarbone my senior year of high school in Game 5 and had my official visit at Georgia State the very next weekend. So I'm walking up in a sling. They're like, hey, you were number 2 on our list for guys who wanted to recruit. Now you're banged up, so sayonara, peace, and pulled the offer. So then what happens? I go to my UAB official visit the next week, Sanford on that same weekend, because it worked out that way. And then they pull their offers, and then there goes Houston Baptist and everybody else just because the ESPN network, so to speak, find it, or the other recruiters find it. So by the end of my senior year, was able to come back playing a state championship game when the team kind of stumbled to get to that point, and had the game of my life, which kind of got some college interest back, but none of it was at the Division I level, and kind of had to restart through everything. So recruiting process restarted for me when I was going into like baseball season and all that after National Signing Day. So I thought I would go to Alderson Broaddus University in West Virginia. And then it turned out on signing day that they pulled the offer from me because the leading passer in the state of Pennsylvania decided to commit to him. Who cares? Whatever. But found little old Texas Wesleyan. So funny story about them is they were in a very same situation as UAB. They never had a football program, or they haven't had a football program since 1941. So they shut down the football program when the team captain went to go fight in World War II, challenged the team to go with them. And so they were starting back up in the fall of 2016, bringing 75 guys into a class that we would just sit there and work out for a year, not touch the football field until the spring. And then we were able to go build a football program. So I was like, hey, I like that challenge. It's going to show my leadership to an NFL team. And whenever I got to that point, because my whole goal was, all right, I'm going to go in and do what I can academically to graduate in the December semester or in the fall semester regardless. So I was fortunate enough to do that 4.5 years, get a master's degree and a bachelor's out of it. But that was my plan going into it. Like, I'm going to graduate in December. So what else can I do to make my NFL resume look good? And that's, okay, go to a football program that maybe I wouldn't get the looks because it's NAIA, but it's an opportunity to go play, and it's an opportunity to go start a program and work on my leadership, work on starting a program from the ground up. What I've found through then my professional career is a lot of these arena organizations need that leadership. And in the XFL, starting up, restarting, they're going to need the same thing. So it's something that I think that I bring to the table from my experience. But what brought me to Texas Wesleyan, long story short, though, was an all-star game out in DeSoto, Texas, where they gave me the card and said, hey, we're starting up the program. And that's where everything just kind of started circling like, hey, I don't have to go D3 like I was thinking I was going to have to do and pay money. I was being offered scholarship to go play at an NAIA school, and I did. So college career obviously had plenty of ups and downs, but I wouldn't trade anything for to go back to Texas Wesleyan and say, hey, like I'm proud alumni, happy I've been there, done that. But at the same time, like, it made me to who I am today. So that was the recruiting process, but yeah, whirlwind for real.
I think there is a lot to be said about people that are battle tested, not just necessarily in the game, right? I think there's a lot of things that everyone's like, oh, some adversity, on the football field kind of helps. No, I think some adversity in life, because you got to really figure out who you are, mental toughness and, your outlook. Can you keep a positive outlook? It's funny because I'm a Dolphins fan, and I got some buddies that were just sending me some text, right? The Dolphins weren't looking too good there against the Ravens. And I'm like, there's 4 quarters, man. And it's not that I think that the Dolphins are going to win the game, but the game isn't over until they blow that whistle. And the people that can keep their calm, cool, and collected have an impact on the rest of the guys. That guy in the huddle. Now, it just happens to be you're a quarterback, right? So here you are, battle tested in a way that your offers were all just drying up. You still found a way, and I don't know what your mindset was then but it sounded like you were ready for the biggest challenge of them all, of building a new program. So it tells me that you didn't shy away from anything. You could have just went to any D3 school and just said, forget about it, just gonna go play football. But you did take the harder road, so to speak. So,
of course,
I think there's something to be said about those type of guys. So any adversity you got while playing the game is just, to me, even an added bonus, because life, doesn't matter what sport you play, it's not going to be easy. And if it did, when you finally hit that roadblock, will you know how to proceed, how to handle it, right? So I think it's good that you've had, this crazy path, to where you're at. Now, I didn't dig too much into your numbers, so your collegiate numbers. From your time at Texas Wesleyan University, did you receive any honors or receive any invitation to senior bowls?
No. So I was someone who started off when the program started. I was getting playing time then. We had a grad transfer come in and took my spot straight from me just because he was grad transferring from a D1 school. And so there was a time where I started the program, played well, had the spot taken, demoted down to scout team. Through all that, I was still a 4-time academic Sooner Athletic Conference player, but none where it ended up saying, okay, hey, you're the first team, all team quarterback, what Sooner Athletic quarterback, whatever. But no, we were building a program. And so record wise, we were 0-11, 2-8, 3-7, and then 1-1 in the COVID year that kind of ended everything for me. And so it was a true build where, for me, starting out, earned the job to go play, put up some good numbers, got benched when the D1 transfer came in, got demoted to scout team, had to fight my way back up, played. And for me, I was still number 2 on the depth chart, but I decided, hey, I don't think I'm going to develop if I'm just going to sit here on the sidelines and do hand signals. I want to go help the first team defense get better. And so I went over to the first team defense and said, hey, let's get this work in. I don't care if everybody else on scout team is the freshman or the sophomore or even the junior that somehow made it onto the football team that is good at football, but maybe not as good as a college level athlete should be. We're going to go in here and do work and make sure that you guys get the reps that you need to go out on Saturday and help win us a football game. And that still led to playing time because the Division I quarterback that we had transfer in would get hurt at times and was able to go in and either mop up things if we were losing terribly or the couple games that we were winning a lot could go in and mop things up, but also had chances to start games whenever he was injured. So I played in 21 games in my career, started 15 of them, and put up pretty solid stats, 2,800 yards. Don't even remember how many touchdowns, whatever. I'd have to go look at it, but had a very solid career for the journey that I kind of had to undertake. And then COVID threw everything for a loop where came back. I was going back as a redshirt senior, had the job back, was ready to go become a all conference player. And then got COVID right a week before our first game of the season. So ended up not playing in the 2 games that we did play. And then as soon as I got cleared to come back, we had one of our players play with COVID and then cancel our 3rd and final game. So, and then graduated in December, like we talked about. And then that ended up canceling stopping my ability to come back in the spring to play the last 6 games that we would have. So it's definitely a whirlwind of a career, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because I tell everybody that for me, the development that I had on scout team has probably been that drive that I had to have to try to prepare like I'm the starter and fight on scout team every single day. Like for me, every day was game day. I wasn't being babied around saying, oh no, you're tapped on the shoulder, play's dead. No, I was getting full on like hit sticked, like you would see in Madden, every single play, every single game. And so for me, game day was that 3-hour practice whenever I was on scout team. So I went out and I tried to rack up Scout Team Player of the Week awards every week. And it got to a point where they decided, like, hey, we're going to start awarding these receivers the Scout Team Player of the Week. So I just said on the Sunday meetings, like, hey, when the Scout Team Player of the Week's awarded to a receiver, I just know that it was me that really won the award, but they can't give it to me. But I tell everybody that my time on Scout Team really probably made me the player that I am today, because it put an extra level of fire or an extra level of grit. And since turning pro and working with Tom House and the same guys that train Drew Brees and Tom Brady, it's the same type of fire that they have, especially Brady, to be able to prove people wrong and say, hey, like, you may not be the biggest or the tallest or the most athletic in Brady's case, but that fire of saying, hey, I'm a pick 199 in the 6th round and everyone was doubting me out anyway. I get a shot because Drew Bledsoe gets down or goes down with an injury. I'm going to go show you that I can go play another 24, 22 years, whatever it is, in the league now, and go be a guy wearing a gold jacket. So that's the same type of fire that I have. And I think Scout Team kind of molded that into me. And then it just benefited me once I got to arena ball and taking that journey back up to where I know I should have been with NFL interest, XFL interest, USFL interest, and getting that opportunity in the outdoor game to really show what I have.
You obviously did something right, because I stumbled across that from your time at Texas Wesleyan, you had an award named after you.
Yep.
Can you enlighten us how this honor came about and what the award actually is?
Yeah. So to be honest, I'm not even sure if they're handing it out anymore, because the head coach is still there. And I just saw him earlier this year when I went back their opening game against Arkansas State, Quintanero, or some school down in Mexico that's branded as Arkansas State. But I'm pretty sure Coach Prudhomme still gives that award out, but it was kind of coined by our offensive coordinator when he saw all the work that I was putting in and the level of effort and the enthusiasm that I would bring to every single day in practice. And so one thing our head coach, Coach Joe Prudhomme, does say is we have an acronym. So Texas Wesleyan is the Texas Wesleyan Rams. So we have an acronym that is RAMS, and it stands for respect, accountability, mentality, and sacrifice. And that was our like solid base foundation of what we wanted to be as a program, whether it's athletes or students in the classroom. So that directed how each one of us were to act. And for me, I just tried to go in and do what I could to be the most respectful, or to hold my teammates accountable, to have that mentality of never give up and continue to fight regardless. And then to sacrifice whatever I needed to sacrifice to be on that field. And so at the end of my college career, when I came crying in the office saying, hey, I can't come back because I'm graduating, and the athletic director said I'd have to take classes and all of that, and thinking I would have had another 6 games, and it just didn't work out that way, they awarded me an honor of saying, hey, like, because of what you've meant to this program, even though you haven't played every single game since this program started, and we've even kind of done some wrong to you in terms of playing the other guy over you, we're going to give an award called the Arth Rams Award in your honor to a player every year that exhibits the Rams mentality. So the respect, accountability, mentality, sacrifice that you showed your 4.5 years here building up the program at Texas Wesleyan. So I've never been a part of the actual handing out of the award. So I'm not going to go say that it's something that actually truly stuck, but they did say that it would be an award that they would be giving out to a player every year, whether he was a guy that played or a guy that was on scout team or whatever. But whoever resembled the Rams mentality would be someone who would get that award. So it's definitely something that I'm very honored, because I would have never expected to be given the opportunity to have an award named after me. I was hoping that maybe I would win a Heisman Trophy or a best quarterback in the NAI award or whatever, or a couple maybe Sooner Athletic Conference or all NAI All-Americans. But I never thought that a true character award would kind of be named after me, which is something that I hold myself to because I am a person of faith. And so that's something that I try to exhibit and spread with everything that I do. It's my platform. And so that just kind of was a reassurance to me saying, hey, like, you're doing something right if your coaches that maybe mistreated you in terms of playing time still saw what you brought to the table, even if it wasn't the number of touchdowns or the game time that you truly gave to the program towards the end of your career. But it accumulated into an award that I'm forever grateful for.
So you had already kind of shared the arena going professional. So after college, you signed with the Peach State Cats of the United Arena League. How did this opportunity come about?
So funny enough, I had actually gone back to school because my coaches were telling like, hey, like you could come back in the spring and still play, not have to take a single class. And then money started rearing its head saying, hey, you've got to now pay meal plan or room and board or whatever because of budget cuts. And me trying to get the money taken off the account because I'd already graduated with a master's degree. It's like, all right, I'm here to play football. I'm not here to take class anymore. I got my degrees. It ended up coming to the athletic director saying, hey, you need to take courses or you got to get out. And so I made the decision, hey, time to get out. And what I had to put on film was good enough, I think, to get an NFL look or a UDFA invite. But because of my decision to go back and try to push off the draft process by a whole year, I missed the NFL draft deadline by a week. And I was searching for agents, things like that. Nothing really kind of popped up immediately. So I was thinking my football career is done. So I moved back home with my parents to start looking for a job. And then I had could have been college teammate, but college rival of mine reach out that was from the Atlanta area that played out in Texas as well, saying, hey, like I ended up quitting that team out in Texas and I moved back home and I'm playing for this small arena team called the Peach State Cats. It's here in Georgia. I've been to practices like 2 or 3 weeks and they're saying they need a quarterback. So you mind coming on in? And they're paying $600 for the season. So let's go on in and be the teammates that we should have been during his JUCO recruiting process. And so I went on in there, had a blast in terms of playing arena football. It's completely different than the 11-on-11 game. Had some fun playing arena football, played there for 4 games, and then realized that, all right, it's borderline semi-pro. It's still professional, but the way that some of the teams were operated, Peach State Cats definitely weren't. But some of the other teams we played and the fields that we were playing on wasn't good for my health in getting film for the NFL draft or being a UDFA. And so I ended up leaving at the end of the 4th game and then still led the league in passing by the end of the season. And was awarded 2021 UAL Rookie of the Year. And then obviously the Peach State Cats have now moved up into another league, and then they're slowly trying to build themselves as a team to by one day hopefully get into the NAL or the CIF or the Indoor Football League is where they kind of envision themselves. But right now they're looking at themselves as the premier developmental arena league for the next level leagues. So that's kind of my journey with the Peach State Cats there. And then obviously found an agent during that time. And I was starting to kind of get attention from some NFL and CFL teams, the spring league at the time. They invited me out to do or to be a practice squad player for the Alphas for that championship weekend. So I was able to go spend a week with that team and kind of practice with them. But it was kind of more of like, hey, like we just need a quarterback to be scout team for somebody for the championship week. So go do that. So I don't even put it on my resume that I've been there because in my opinion, it doesn't count. So go there, do that. And it opened up opportunities to where my agent was able to place me in the Indoor Football League this past spring with the Tucson Sugar Skulls. And then there's a completely different story with that too. But yeah, so that was kind of time with the Peach State Cats.
If you want to share your other experience, you're more than welcome to. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't dig it up. I always think it's interesting that players who play indoor arena, however term that various leagues use, and I don't know, maybe there's a difference technically with the rules of why they call it one versus the other. I mean, if you want to share your other experience or if you have insight as to why they call it one way or the other, hey, enlighten us. Why not?
Yeah, for me, I think arena and indoor are completely interchangeable. I think it's just how they want to brand it. But at the same time, I do know that there were some differences from my time with the Peach State Cats playing branded arena football to then the indoor football league, which is branded indoor football. So a lot of that is kind of more taking up CFL rules or not taking up CFL rules. So in the arena game, you're allowed one receiver to move in a high motion similar to the CFL up in Canada. But in the IFL, you're allowed two receivers in motion or a high motion towards the line of scrimmage. And so that's really the biggest difference. But then there's some kind of differences with in the indoor game, one linebacker has to stay in the box or like a 5x5 box in coverage unless the quarterback breaks contain, and then he's allowed to leave the box. As opposed to like in the arena game, it's just a free for all. It's just 8v8. Defensive players can move wherever all over the place. Offensive players can move around all over the place. And with the indoor game, it's just a little more structured, and there's more rules that you have to think about. So one thing that I actually liked about it was the blitz. Like if there's an extra blitzer than the three defensive linemen, they have to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm blitzing." So it's kind of like, all right, oh yeah, watch 54. He's blitzing here because he has to tell the ref that he's blitzing. It's weird for sure, but it definitely helps with your pre-snap awareness of what defensive coverages that they're in and be able to truly read and react to things as opposed to read a play like I am accustomed to in the 11-on-11 game. But if we get into Tucson, my agent got me placed with the Tucson Sugar Skulls in the indoor football league, which has kind of taken place of the old AFL that like Kurt Warner played for. And so that league ended up shutting down, I believe, in like 2015, 2016 due to bankruptcy, whatever. People just stopped going. And so the indoor football league kind of took that mantle of saying, hey, we're going to pick up some of those teams that have fallen, like the Iowa Barnstormers, and then we're just going to continue to add teams to it. So my agent got me placed to Tucson, and I ended up going into camp with them. Little did I know, though, that it was a last-minute placing. So they had already had a quarterback by the name of Daquan Neal, who signed with the USFL, already signed there. He was a former 2019 league MVP, and I didn't know that when I signed the contract. I'm thinking I'm going in there to be the guy, or at least compete to be the guy. And then once I sign the contract, show up to camp, it's like, hey, Justin, no matter what you do, you're not starting. We've got 2019 league MVP here, Daquan Neal, and more power to him. But I was like, hey, I'm going to go in. I'm still try pushing for his job. And so I did that. But during that time, during training camp, CFL teams were like, hey, like, we love what you're doing, and we love the film that you've already put on paper, and we see that you're signed with an indoor football league team. We want you out at our private workouts in April. And what it turned into was going into training camp, I was cleared to go to one or two workouts because I only knew of one or two teams at the time that were wanting me to try out. But then it turned into 6 of the 9 teams in the league wanting me to try out. And I'm like, hey, like the way this is working out between my second home of Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, and my original home here in Atlanta, like I could go to all 6 of these teams, 6 weeks back to back to back. But unfortunately, it's me being out weeks 2 to week 8. And so I would miss half the season, even though I was the backup. I didn't want to do that to the organization. And so because of the fact that I wasn't going to get playing time regardless, and then just the fact that I had CFL teams looking at me saying, hey, we want you to be at our private workouts, I made the tough, difficult decision to the final day of training camp saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead and leave the organization, make it easier for you, because I feel like I'm needing to pursue these CFL opportunities. And then it ended up adding another NFL workout with the San Francisco 49ers weekend before. So it turned into 7 straight weeks of workouts. And so the San Francisco 49ers workout went really well. It was like, hey, we'll give you a contact back after the draft. Fortunately, they drafted Brock Purdy with the final pick of the draft. So then that kind of screwed everything up there. But no, I mean, and then same thing with the CFLs. The 6 CFL teams back to back to back went very, very well. But it was all the same thing. Like, hey, we got 8 Qs on roster for training camp already. So you're number 1 on our list to call when we need a guy. So I've kind of always been on standby with CFLs. And even this past weekend, right after the XFL DC workout, hopped on the train to get back to Baltimore, flew back to Atlanta that same night after the XFL DC workout, and was straight back working out for the Saskatchewan Rough Riders because they wanted to see me one more time before they ended off their season here in about 2 or 3 weeks. So, I mean, it's definitely been a whirlwind. I've definitely gotten a lot of maybes, but it's good that I'm not getting no's. So I'm just continuing to pursue that dream of being the guy at the end of the tunnel that's wearing the gold jacket in Canton. So it's what I got to do at this point in my journey, and whatever's next, only God knows. So,
we have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, player 54. I mean, you're essentially that guy right there, whether it's for the CFL, whether it's for an NFL team that's always taking a look at you're right there.
Yep.
It's enough to tell you that you're meant to be pursuing this. It's not meant to give up with, especially you're blessed with the time that you're coming through this, right? Just we happen to have so many more leagues now, the National Football League, the Canadian Football League, the USFL, the XFL, there for a moment looked like there was going to be Major League Football, and then, but that might even come back. It's obviously you are talented enough to play someplace here, and obviously maybe even back in some form of arena. So,
of course,
obviously, you are not giving up. You back in, July, participated at the XFL Texas Showcase?
Yep. The Texas Arlington Showcase with the XFL, yep.
What was your showcase experience like?
Yeah, so that one's, again, a completely crazy story too. So the ANC Combines and XFL staff invited me to be a part of the showcase. I ended up paying my way to make sure I would be there, have the ticket. Well, a couple days beforehand, they're like, hey, we've got a couple other guys that are showing up that have a better resume than you. So we're pulling your ticket from you. And I'm like, what? I was about to hop on a plane to come to Dallas, Fort Worth for that. So I'm still coming regardless. So is there any way I can be a staff quarterback or whatever, just to continue to be seen by you? Kind of taking that, like the guy that went to the Cleveland Browns training facility, stood out there every single day with a cardboard sign saying, hey, sign me. I do this, this, and this. And then he ended up getting an opportunity to work out for him. I'm like, hey, I'm going to go in and make my own luck. So if you give me an opportunity to be a staff quarterback, I'm going to do that. And so luckily they gave me a chance to be a staff quarterback. So I showed up 7 a.m. at Choctaw Stadium over in Arlington and met with the ANC Combines people that were running it, showed up, got a t-shirt, and decided, hey, I'm going to go throw to these defensive backs because that's where you need me. And I'm going to do everything in my power to show that I'm an XFL or an NFL caliber quarterback in every drill that you're going to have me throw. So I went in through to defensive backs, through to linebackers, doing breaking drills, all this other kind of stuff. And I had Coach Beck from St. Louis and Coach Hines Ward, which was big for me because I grew up a Georgia fan. He's a Georgia legend, and pulled me to the side like, hey, you look familiar. And I'm like, yeah, my name's Justin Arth. I'm a quarterback. I was invited to the showcase, but had my ticket pulled last minute. So what I decided to come here and be a staff quarterback so I could still get looks. And they're like, hey, you're actually pretty good. I don't know why they pulled the ticket from you. I think that's more an ANC Combines thing, but we want to invite you to stay for the afternoon session when the offensive guys show up. And so ended up going through the rest of the defensive session, still giving those defensive guys all I had, because I want to make sure that those guys get good reps, good looks too, because just as I deserve a shot to be in the league, so do those guys that are working their tails off. So I regardless of how my arm would feel, go in and worked extremely hard to make sure that they would look good. And then decided, all right, I'm staying for the afternoon session. I made my own luck. Now it's time to go showcase it. Ended up doing all their 3D motion cap quarterback drills. And then we're showing up to start testing with 40s and getting into one-on-ones and all the other things that would happen later in the day with the breakaway motion data. And then ANC Combine staff realized that I was still the staff quarterback wearing a t-shirt. And a part of the deal was you wouldn't talk to anybody. You would just be there for your job and leave. And so security came up to me midway through the offensive session saying, hey, you're not one of the guys with the jersey number on. Get the heck out. So midway through the offensive portion, was still kicked out of the stadium. But then I'm driving home or driving back to my girlfriend's house who lives out there. And we're going to a dinner with her grandfather. And then my phone's getting blown up from friends, people, whatever, saying, hey, check Instagram right now. Check Instagram right now. I'm like, what's so wrong with Instagram that I need to go check right now? And then I'm hopping on and like, no, go check the XFL's official page. And I do. And I'm the one guy highlighted from all the quarterbacks. And it's like, all right, you invited all these other QBs, but you're highlighting the staff QB for the workout. And so that was a big surreal moment. to not only have Coach Becht and Coach Ward take interest in you, but also for the media people of the XFL to say, hey, like this kid's got something, and we're going to, yeah, you didn't tag me in it, but you're still going to post the pictures and say, this is potentially one of our quarterbacks. And so it was definitely a surreal opportunity. And then that continued to open up doors with XFL Vegas, XFL DC, and then maybe a couple more coming up here pretty soon. So it just continued to knock down doors, and fingers crossed get that draft invite or supplemental draft invite, since I'll be out at the supplemental draft showcase in October in San Diego, and go from there, make a roster, go compete, and go help whatever XFL organization finds interest in me, go help them win a championship.
This is what's interesting about the XFL, right? Forget about 1.0 back in 2001, 2020. This iteration of it is very interesting because they keep talking about leave no stone left unturned, right? Yep. So it just, every time you turn around, you kind of find out, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But even in there, they were willing to, hey, you got to do the afternoon session. We missed this. However, whoever in personnel that messed up, essentially that's what they're telling you, right? There's no way your ticket should have been pulled. So here they are. The coach is like, this guy needs to be. So they're constantly, I like that, right? I mean, and as a fan, as somebody that just loves football, you want the best talent, right? And you want any league that's really not just going to go, well, hey, we've already done our research. We're going to trust the scouting reports we already have. And, you know, whether it's the personnel people, whatever. I kind of like that no matter what, they're going after who they see. And they added that additional showcase through ANC here coming up in October and stuff. I like the fact that they're just not giving up. There's only so many seats at the table. They could have easily just said, we've got plenty of players we looked at, we'll just pick between. But they're not satisfied. And it doesn't mean that they're not seeing the right amount of talent. They know there's more people yet to be seen. And I love that. And the fact that they saw you and they could have just been, oh, you know, whatever. But they had stopped, had the conversation with you, made sure you participated. It's ANC that essentially pulled the ticket on you again and kicked you back out. Yeah. It's unfortunate. But those conversations leave lasting impressions.
Of course.
Whether it's Coach Becht.
And that's what makes
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's what makes me very confident in the fact that this league isn't going to be like one of these other leagues or like the AAF, for example, like one that just shows up and is like, all right, we go bankrupt midseason, we're done, everybody out. Everything that I've seen from the upper level personnel to the personnel that I've been around with the Vegas team, with the DC team, the conversations I've had with some of the head coaches at the Arlington Showcase, and obviously what I'm going to see in San Diego, they're not going to leave any stone unturned to find the best 53 guys to do a job. They don't care if you've played in the NFL for 6 years, got cut, and now you're a brand name because you're verified on social media. They're going to go find the best 53 or whatever the roster size is for the XFL. They're going to find those best guys, and the guys that want it the most are going to be the guys that are on the field. And that's what I truly like about this league. And I mean, because you see how like the USFL operated. No slight to the USFL at all. If I get a contract offer to go there, I'm going there, as opposed to if I get one or don't get one in the XFL. Like whatever. But with the USFL last year, they were legitimately looking at who was on a spring league roster, an NFL roster, and only inviting those guys. They weren't having private workouts. They weren't doing anything. It was legitimately solely based on your resume of did you play in the spring league, did you play in the AAF, or did you play in the NFL or CFL, and that's your draft invitation. And so it was more profit-based in a way. They're trying to build a brand by bringing in brand names, saying this guy played for the Packers and this guy played for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and these are the guys that are your player 54s. Not necessary. And so the XFL is definitely not leaving any stone unturned here by saying, hey, we're going to go find talent wherever. We don't care if you've not even played a single down of football. If you can show us something and show us that you're coachable, you can be a guy that can be successful in this league.
So obviously you got offered those private workouts, right? 2 so far, right? Vegas, yeah, 2 so far. DC. Can you walk us through what they're like? You know, obviously they're workouts, but I mean, were there any differences compared to what you've done in the past? Are they more one-on-one? Is it kind of a group setting? What does it entail? Kind of just share with our listeners what it's about.
So with these private workouts, every organization is going to run it differently. So like XFL Vegas, for example, they still place a high value on your 40 time and your testing data. So we went in there and we did testing. Okay, we're going to go run our 40s. We're going to do our short shuttle. We're going to do the L drill, everything you'd see at the NFL Combine. And then we're going to get on the field and then go do competition drills. So one-on-ones, routes on air, different position individual drills to make sure that we can see what you have as a quarterback or what you have as a receiver or what you have as a DB, etc. But then when we got to XFL DC last weekend, it was completely different. They said, we don't care what your testing numbers is. We want to see who's a baller. We want to see who's a true football player. And they were very specific with being unlike a lot of these CFL workouts, where CFL workouts just try to run you into the ground by doing testing, then one-on-ones, then this, then that, 7-on-7 competition, whatever. By the end of a CFL private workout or a tryout, whatever, you're dead because you spent 4 or 5 hours just nonstop doing stuff, just trying to rep everything out and get as many reps to be seen. The XFL DC was especially different because they said, hey, we've got 4 hours blocked out. We're not doing any testing because we can have your testing numbers from guys who have already been to showcases or guys that are going to be at the showcase in San Diego. Or if we really need the number, we'll text you and have you record a video of yourself. But what we want to see is we want to see ballers. So we're going to go do individual drill. We're going to take a nice long water break. Have trainers out there to stretch you out, do this, that, whatever you need to do. And then we're going to go do routes on air to see how you move in space. And then we're going to bring the DBs in, and then we're going to go compete, and everybody's going to stay up, and we're going to have fun. And we're going to take our time in reps. We're not going to sit here and just go willy-nilly and say, all right, haul ass through reps just to try to get seen. No, they wanted every quarterback to be ready to go. They wanted every receiver to be ready to go, every DB to be ready to go, because they wanted everyone to put their best foot forward for every rep that you got. And so I really think Coach Case and Coach Barlow and everybody with the XFL DC staff is truly on something here, or on to something here, because what they're doing is different than anything else that I've been at. But it produced the highest work ethic that I've ever seen at a private workout. And that's including private workouts that are more individual at the NFL level. And so they're trying to see who the ballers are, and that's all they care about.
Really cool. I mean, you have to at some point start seeing the differences between these teams. And it's very clear between two, right? And I'm also curious, I thought I had heard someplace that the teams are still going to share information from the private workouts. Is that true? Is that what you've been told? Is that what you've been led to believe?
Yeah. So everything that I've heard is that they'll gladly share the information to other people, because even though XFL DC wants to make sure that they have a competitive edge to put the best team in Washington, DC that they possibly can, as opposed to not wanting the Dallas team to have a good team or whatever. Like, they truly want to make sure that the guys that deserve an opportunity to be in this league, even if it's not with them, have an opportunity. And so they're going to get the data to Seattle, to DC, to Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, whatever. And so everything's shareable. And in a way, that may be some reason why, like, XFL Vegas will put higher priority on running like 40s and things like that, because all that's going to be shared with all the other teams anyway. But none of it's recorded unless the team personally hires a guy to come out to do some videography and photography, which Vegas did not have, but DC did, and was able to throw some stuff on my socials today from that, because I finally got some of that back. But no, I mean, these guys are legit in terms of keeping the invited numbers small. So there was 8 quarterbacks there, about 20 receivers, and about 20 DBs. But when you're running through reps like that, even if it's at a slower pace like we were, everybody's getting a true fair shot in that 2 hours that we had to do that. But everything's staying small within 40 or 50 guys for every workout that I've been at. So they want to make sure everybody gets the individual attention and the individual evaluation to make sure that they can show everything that they possibly can show to be one of those names called in November or December with the supplemental draft, or be a free agent that's brought in for camp.
Good deal. That sounds really awesome. You have representation now, right? Are you with a particular agency or just an individual?
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm actually represented by 2 agencies. So I'm still kind of with the old agency for the arena-based stuff with Brandy Runyon and Black Diamond Sports. But then I'm also kind of moved over to Deron Griffin and Griff Sports Management for the NFL, XFL, and the higher level football side. And so I'm kind of still working with both vicariously through each other to make sure that I leave no stone unturned too. I mean, I've got a couple arena offers that I'm sitting on right now, a couple bigger offers that are definitely going to be coming through pretty soon. And then fingers crossed, the XFL offers the draft invite, and that's where I'm going. So, but just like how the XFL is not leaving any stone unturned to get the best players, I'm leaving no stone unturned in terms of getting me the game film that I need to, at the end of the day, be an NFL starting quarterback.
Well, you have to, right? I mean, it's just as common sense. The leagues have to do what's in their best interest. You have to do what's in your best interest. So I completely get it. The reason why I asked those questions is because, back in August, we learned of, the draft invitation situation. And I'm trying to help any players. I get contacted all the time by various players that want to come on the show. And some people, just don't have ties to the XFL whatsoever. And I try to make it, related to the league that I'm covering here. So I think it's important to share who you're represented by, what your experience is. How are they helping you in the process of achieving your goals? Are they really, I know you got 2 different agencies here, so it's probably night and day different in some, but who's helping you more so in focusing on your training and all that type of stuff? Or are you really just kind of doing that on your own?
So when I was looking for new agents, I really only kind of left Black Diamond as a full service client, solely just due to the fact that her connection base is in the Canadian Football League and arena. So she'll do anything that works with the CFL or arena. And I needed someone who was heavily connected, like with the NFL, XFL, USFL. And so Deron was able to do that. And he's definitely working his connections very well. But what I'm finding too is, although he's got connections that maybe gets me a phone number, I'm still doing all the work myself. So it's not like my agent's calling everybody saying, "Hey, look at this, look at this guy, look at this guy, reach out to him." No, like I'm getting phone numbers from him, and I'm still going to work myself, emailing and texting and whoever, any coach, my film and my resume, and saying, "Hey, like, what can I do for a workout, or what can I do? Get my information in your hands." So for me, I'm doing everything on my own at this point, because what I'm finding is doors are opening when I'm doing the work, as opposed to when an agent's just kind of sitting back doing the work. But in terms of training and things like that, I've been with APEC DFW for a while. Whenever I'm out there in Dallas, APEC's an amazing place to be. But I was connected with Tom House Sports, and Tom House, the throwing guru, has taught so many NFL quarterbacks as well as Major League Baseball pitchers everything they know. And I'm blessed to call him a mentor of mine now too, but I've been with them ever since I turned pro. And yeah, it's led to connections like APEC, where I have a gym to go work out at with NFL players and things like that. But Tom has really taken me under his wing with the other coaches like Robert Ambrose here in Peachtree City, Georgia, that I work out with weekly, daily. And so those guys have really kind of taken my mechanics to the next level, and making sure that my functional strength is there. My absolute strength is there. My mental capacity to get into a flow state to where everything just comes off the right brain, to where I'm just kind of feeling and doing as opposed to thinking about it. And then obviously biomechanics that everybody wants to talk about. But then even take it a step further, like I'm on a meal plan and running the whole TB12 method type stuff. So it's a full holistic kind of lifestyle now in pursuing the greatness of being the best quarterback that I could be each and every day. And so I'm forever in debt to Tom, and I'm training young quarterbacks and stuff like that now too. And same thing with young pitchers to kind of help them out as well, to continue to grow the company and give back to the many kids that deserve that same type of thing that I was looking for at that age. No, I mean, Tom House Sports, national pitching, national football, kind of all branched into the same thing is where I do all my training. And then from the functional and absolute strength side, APEC out in DFW. And then a lot of it whenever I'm home in Georgia, like I am now, is a lot of band work, a lot of pliability. And then I've got a little weight room set here in my room. So do a lot from there, but a lot of it is self-made. So I'm doing everything that I can to put my name out wherever I can. And it's all me doing it. So it's God opening up the doors, but it's the work that I'm putting in, whether it's contacting a coach or getting to a weight room or whatever, that's opening up the doors. So if anybody out there's watching, listening, and you want to be a part of it, go work your tail off, and it's going to pay off at some point. You just have to continue to persevere through it and have faith that the hard work that you're putting in now is going to pay off in the end, and get up every day and get 1% better, because you're either getting better or you're getting worse. You're not staying the same.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but I've had an XFL executive on the show before. So I typically provide an opportunity to each of my guests. If XFL coaches or key staff members were tuning in to this episode, I know you've already met certain ones, you're already interacting, but let's say one of the ones haven't. What is there about you, like one thing that is really unknown? Nobody has a clue that hasn't already worked with you in the college ranks or high school. What is the one thing about you that's very vital to who you are and what you bring to the table that they need to know so they can select you over another player?
I'm a winner. So the thing is, you go back through everything. Yeah, the wins and losses in college technically kind of take a hit to that, but everything that I've done is anytime I'm under center, we're winning a football game. So I'm coming in with a Drew Brees-like attitude, a Drew Brees-like mentality. It's funny enough that I say that because Tom compares me to Drew personality-wise. He's saying, hey, whenever I got a broken Drew Brees with a torn-up shoulder in San Diego and I met him the first time, that same type of quiet confidence, yet outstanding leader that will do everything at the smallest level of detail, but at highest level of effort, that's you. Or in that case, it's me. So, I mean, I really do take all that. So I take my preparation more seriously than anything. And I think that's what separates me and makes me that winner. I'm going to be the guy that's going to sit 6, 7, 8 hours if I have to, watching the same clip over and over and over again, just to get tendencies on every single defensive player that's on the field. And heck, even look at our tendencies to make sure, like, hey, center, if you're moving to the left, you're kicking your right foot back. And if you're stepping to the right, you're kicking your left foot back. Like little things that are going to make us better as a football team. And I'm just a football junkie. So I'm going to sit there, and every time I watch football, it's a job. It's a business to me. So if I'm watching Thursday Night Football tonight, or if I'm watching the NFL games on Sunday, I'm not enjoying it. I'm sitting there and I'm analyzing everything. That's why baseball's kind of my big kind of sit back and, all right, I'm going to sit here, watch the Atlanta Braves go win another World Series, hopefully. And that's going to be my pastime of, all right, that's me shutting off and relaxing. But no, I'm a true winner. Anytime I'm under center, I get the job done however it needs to be. And the guys are going to see that in the locker room once I'm drafted into the XFL.
Justin, it has been a pleasure. And I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk with me about your football experience, your XFL showcase experience, your workout experience with the XFL Las Vegas and DC teams. I really hope you get that invitation. I mean, it just seems like you would be the perfect fit. I mean, obviously they're interested. Let's just make it official and get you that invitation. So ultimately you can get selected and play in 2023. Because if so, I would love to have you come back on so we can discuss how things are going in the XFL for you and your team.
Oh, yeah. Well, Michael, I'm always down to hop on here anytime. And obviously with an XFL contract, who knows what they may or may not allow me to do. But, hey, anything I can do to hop back on the channel and help whatever, I'm all game.
I get it. Once you're employed, there's different rules. So, hey, we can cross our fingers and hope, right?
Of course.
If some of our listeners want to follow you in your journey, where could they do so?
Well, you can follow me on all my socials. So you can follow me on IG or Instagram, JArthQB11, on Twitter, Justin Arth QB. You can follow me over on TikTok, JArthQB11 as well. Got a couple things that have blown up there that you'll like. Justin Arth on YouTube. I'm kind of doing the whole YouTube thing, try to get my name out there too with some behind the scenes vlogs and all that. But then I've also got my own personal brand that kind of branches out from Tom House Sports, where I do some quarterback training, but you can follow the journey. It's called A11performance.com, and you can check me out there too. So it highlights the journey. It highlights the training modules that I can provide for quarterback services and all that kind of stuff too. So stay up to date on the journey, and you'll definitely see plenty of more content come from me soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Justin.
I appreciate you, Michael.
All right. Take care. I first learned of Justin from fellow dedicated alternative football media members. As I researched him, I became intrigued with his underdog path and positive outlook. He continues to catch the eye of alternative football coaches and leagues. Since recording his interview, Justin signed a contract with CIF's Wyoming Mustangs. This does not hinder his XFL chances, because arena and indoor teams have out clauses for the National Football League, Canadian Football League, USFL, and XFL. What the contract does is guarantee that he'll be playing professional football in 2023. Best of luck to Justin on his continued journey. I will now be joined by renowned media member and writer Rod Pedersen. Over the last 30 years, Rod has built an award-winning career in radio and television broadcasting, which includes the past 2 decades as the voice of Canadian Football League's Saskatchewan Roughriders, as well as 17 years as play-by-play broadcast in the Western Hockey League. Rod is also a best-selling author, and his website, rodpedersen.com, has twice been voted Canada's Sports Blog of the Year, with over 25 million all-time hits. Lastly, you can tune into Rod's podcast, The Rod Pedersen Show, for more outstanding coverage and knowledge. Welcome, Rod. I appreciate you taking the time to join the show to discuss Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's meeting with MLSE's chairman, Larry Tanenbaum, and more.
Well, I felt bad. By the way, thanks for having me on, Mike. And you asked me what I knew, and I'm like, I literally don't know anything other than they met. They might have gone for ice cream. I'm not sure. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And 2 people let me know that this meeting was going on. And obviously, I'm not going to reveal their identity, but they wanted me to know that there was a meeting going on. But they didn't say any more. Is this why The Rock was in Toronto? They didn't say what the future was. So, which is fine. It opens the door for us to speculate. I'm cool with that.
Well, we do know that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was in Toronto to promote Black Adam, his movie coming out. So that was the purpose of his visit. But like you said, I use that term all the time, where there's smoke, there's fire. And especially when we have seen this more than once, so to speak, the Canadian Football League, XFL talks, and even surrounding the Toronto Argonauts. There's all that backstory. So you don't know much of anything, but let's kind of go back here a little bit. March 10th of 2021, that's when we first learned of the CFL, XFL discussions. And July 7th of 2021, the Canadian Football League and the XFL ended discussions without an agreement, which resulted in the XFL canceling their 2022 season. 2023 now is upon us. But we fast forward to December 7th, around the Grey Cup, of the Commissioner's State of the League. Randy Ambrosi shared some insight, about the Canadian Football League's discussion with the XFL. He essentially put the matter to rest. However, we've heard those ongoing reports from the Toronto Argonauts, how they are, for whatever reason, dissatisfied, and they have a desire to potentially leave the Canadian Football League. So, what am I missing? What are we missing here stateside? And why do you believe this topic and this potential merger, or the Argonauts defecting the CFL for, an American league? So what are we missing? What is it that you may know, or what are you hearing more? I mean, north of the border that we're not getting here south of the border?
Well, hey, I know a little more than I'm letting on. So I'll let you know what I know. I'd like to think this is just not a bunch of old white men sitting around gossiping. because God knows there's enough of that in football. Something's afoot. And since I've been in South Florida, which is over a year, I've fallen in with a great crowd of guys that are pro football guys that are connected at every level, NFL, CFL, college, high school, all those guys. And some are money guys connected to the NFL and CFL. And basically what I will tell you that you may not know is that the CFL is split in terms of a vision. The community-owned teams, and I've heard this, I believe it, and I know it. The community-owned teams don't want to change anything. They want to stay 9 teams, 10 if they can, but they'd like that 10th team to be in Canada. That's the community-owned teams, and there's some privately-owned teams. Argos for sure being one, and probably the Montreal Alouettes, that they're tired of living hand-to-mouth. They want to make money. Larry Tanenbaum, that chairman of the MLSE, didn't get into this for his health. He wants to make money. They own the Raptors, the Maple Leafs, as you know, an American Hockey League team, the Marlies, the Arena, and the Argos don't make money. So there are a couple of teams at least that I think want to split off and join an American league. And the USFL, let's just park them aside. It's The Rock that owns the XFL and Redbird Capital. You're familiar with all of that. He comes and meets Larry Tanenbaum. What I've been led to believe is there's a lot of U.S. billionaires that just want to own teams. And they've been kicking tires on the Argos and the Alouettes and maybe some other teams in the CFL, and they've been rebuffed. What I'm told, we're not for sale, leave us alone. Billionaires don't take no that easily, Mike. You know what I mean? So, yeah, without getting too far down this road or saying too much, guys that want teams, the CFL teams aren't available. The XFL is in a cash crunch, and they're not, as you probably know, because this is your forte, running like a Swiss watch either. For instance, let's talk about the Las Vegas team. We're a few months away from kickoff, and they don't have a stadium to play. I have a lot of football friends in Las Vegas that say, Allegiant Stadium said, you're not playing here. UNLV said, you're not playing here. I think there's some other middling, smaller stadiums in Las Vegas that they'll probably end up at, but I don't think The Rock wants to come off as small time either. So they got some problems to iron out, but I just think The Rock, he has the CFL in his heart. He played in it. He was cut by it. Let's not forget that he's a huge part of his story, and he's a great businessman. So I think that's why he's kind of turned his attention to Canada. And I still think that partnership may be there. But why you're not hearing stuff from Randy Ambrosie, the commissioner of the CFL, and incidentally, I think he's in a lot of trouble. From what I keep hearing is he's in a lot of trouble. This might be his last season. This may not even involve the CFL. This might be The Rock and Toronto and Montreal see a CFL. Does that give you a little more info?
I believe it does. So you think this could very well be, if the Argos go, the Alouettes are right with them?
I absolutely think that. And that's because the ownership, the personalities involved in the ownership of both teams are very close friends. Shoot, in some cases, I think they might be related or by marriage or something. Like they're one, Toronto and Montreal. And if they think that they've outgrown the CFL, I don't have a problem with that because they probably have. The CFL is not growing, it's shrinking. Toronto and Montreal are world-class cities, and unfortunately, the CFL is not a world-class league. And, I have a problem, and I've spent 20 seasons in the CFL as a play-by-play guy. I have a problem with their resistance to change. They're just happy with what they have. And I'm old enough. I worked in the league in the 90s when we had the 8 U.S.-based teams. It was awesome. It was awesome. More jobs for coaches, players. It's not the same teams. Not the Edmonton Eskimos coming in 4 times a year into your town. I'd love to see the Tampa Bay Vipers. I'd love to see the Houston Roughnecks. And you know what I mean? Listen, Mike, you caught me at a time where I don't even really like talking about it because the diehard, staunch CFL fans, they want my head taken off. They don't want to see any change. The most horrible things have been said about The Rock. I don't even know why. Yeah, that's why I say Canadian football fans are split over what should happen.
I'm not really surprised because with the Canadian Football League willing to come to the table, there must have been more than one person, right? So when we kept hearing the Argonauts, I knew it had to be more. You're not just going to sit at a table because to appease one person. I mean, especially if it's the community teams that really don't care about the privately owned teams. So I kind of speculated that was the case. So what do you think the chances are is it something sooner rather than later? Is it really minimal chance that something actually happens where maybe they leave and join an American league? Are we looking where maybe they would eventually be open to selling the rights to the Argonauts and the Alouettes to American owners? I mean, so I know that's kind of a loaded question, but what is it you think? Is it more you're hearing that is more possible, not possible, or?
Well, I think something's imminent. That's why I think this isn't just talk. But if the CFL has the same bylaws in it, like a lot of hockey leagues that I deal with, you need to give a year's in advance notice of a intention to leave. Okay, so when the XFL kicks off in 2023, which we all assume it will, I don't think there's enough time for the Argonauts to be part of that. I don't, but I think that one thing about these rich guys, and I'm around them all the time, they don't like to admit failure. So in the case of Larry Tanenbaum with the MLSE, he doesn't want to say, we failed with the Argos, I'm selling the team. No, he just wants to make money. That's what his mandate is, and he wants to win championships. So we're a year away, I think, from any sort of split happening. But I think the XFL will kick off. But you know what? As they say, with enough money, anything's possible. So I just think the fact that I was tipped off that this meeting was happening was not by accident. So I'm kind of giving you an idea of what I think is going to happen. But, hey, when this hits the media, people are going to say, oh, Rod doesn't know what he's talking about again. And when you talk about those initial meetings, the reason, Mike, I think they happened, the CFL was on dire straits financially. That was just ahead of the kickoff of the truncated 2021 season. And they'd wiped out 2020. Half these teams, they're always teetering on bankruptcy. I'm shocked they made it through as it was. I think Randy Ambrosie was talking to the XFL as a means for survival. And you mentioned March 10th, good digging up the fact, because I remember that day very well when Ambrosie announced it. I look back and think, why did you do that? I got to think it was just a distraction for guys like you and me to distract us from the real problems of the league, of whether they're going to play or not, our team's going to fold. And to be honest, Randy and I were at one time pretty good friends. I haven't talked with him in a couple of years. I think he's mad at me. I don't really care. I'll be around longer than him. But I don't know why he threw that out. I don't know why.
If they were to make a move, do you think the XFL is the preferred landing spot for like the Argos and Alouettes, or you just think it's just...
The NFL is the preferred landing spot for Toronto. Like Larry Tanenbaum wants that on. He wants that on his tombstone, which I think he's close to 80. Healthy, though, and does a lot of great things. He's chairman of the board of the NBA. Larry wants on his tombstone, this man brought the NFL to Toronto. So that's the preferred.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, that should be the obvious. But I mean, I was trying to look at it as maybe a realistic, but I guess it would be somewhat realistic because we're here in the National Football League is looking at potentially putting 4 teams in Europe. I mean, how couldn't Toronto be in the mix, especially when the Bills used to host some home games in Toronto, right? I mean, so you'd have to think that's just as possible.
Yeah, I'm all for what's best for the game. And you say, like the attendance for the Argonauts is pitiful. I mean, you're clearly very up on the XFL. What would you say was the average attendance in the last iteration of the XFL 2020 season? What was the last? Roughly. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire. But.
Low end was what? Around 15,000 for a team. High end was in the 20s. So, I mean, you're probably averaging 18-ish if you're going across the board. But looking at the Argos, as far as what I remember, maybe not this season, I may not be as in tune. Wasn't last season they were averaging right around 10, 11?
Yeah, I was going to say, those crowds would be double what the Argos are drawing now. And for whatever reason, I don't know. But I've never lived a day in Toronto. I've been there lots, never lived there, so I don't get the mentality of the people there. But what I'm told is they'll latch on to what's the cool thing. Drake made the Raptors very popular before they were a championship team. If the Torontonians felt The Rock was attached to the XFL, they'll probably fill the stadium. And I think they feel they've outgrown the Ottawa Red Blacks and the BC Lions. If they had the New York Guardians come in, it's all about perception, Mike. The football isn't any better in terms of caliber, but they don't know the difference. I don't think they know the difference.
It could just be the 4-down game, right? If Toronto's more of that hip. I've been to Toronto multiple times, and I always kind of got this feeling it's just a miniature Manhattan. but with a Canadian twist, no doubt. I mean, but it had a very similar vibe as Manhattan does, like Broadway shows, all the shows they have, and just even like the nightlife, because I worked in New York City for a bit. So I always kind of had that, similar feel. So I can see the XFL not just talking as well, because we've heard Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Danny Garcia constantly mentioning it's going to be a global league, this global, reach and stuff like that. Well, you can't just be a global league and reach just because you're going to have broadcasting deals, maybe north of the border, south of the border, Europe, wherever, right? To be truly a global league, you're either going to have teams or really draw a lot of players in from other countries, right? That's the only way you have a true global feel for the league. So I can see this is not just talk, right? Even on the XFL's end, right? And so obviously the CFL teams, the privately owned teams, are interested in making a move, doing something. Well, I can definitely see it even on the XFL's end that, all right, this is the right fit. Who wouldn't want Toronto and Montreal, right? So, I mean, if you look at population-wise, aside from that, it's Vancouver, top 3 largest populated cities, right, in Canada, as far as I know. So I get it. I mean, it makes sense that northeastern void right now with the XFL too. If we kind of think about it, Toronto would be easy access for anybody in the Buffalo area. If you live even in parts of eastern New York State and Vermont and New Hampshire, Montreal's not that far of a drive. So I can kind of see if you're trying to lure some people in, not just from Canada to make it a global league. I see it also being very enticing potentially for people now that have that vacant New York Guardians for this time around. There could always be expansion to bring them back, but it makes sense to me. And I don't usually share a lot of my own opinions on the show. I usually try to let everyone else. But this is just a discussion. I've always kind of been intrigued with it. It's put to bed. It resurfaces. Well, again, smoke, fire. You just got to be.
Yeah. So you talk about adding from an XFL standpoint to Canadian markets. All of a sudden, you got teams maybe in Mexico City, that kind of thing. You could be Canada, USA, Mexico, and say you're global, even though you're ignoring the other half of the globe. But with The Rock, who is a star over there, he could legitimately pull it off. And I thought when these talks were happening way back when, and again, try and get Randy Ambrosi on and see what he says. See if he'll say why they went down this road. That's where I thought we were going. And when they pulled the rug out from under it just before the kickoff of that shortened season, I was like, I'm done with you. I'm done with you guys. And most of the league still doesn't want to change. So I'm like, you know what? Good luck. But what I'm telling you about is that text that I got last week. I was in Atlanta when I got it. Tanenbaum of The Rock are meeting this week. Boom. That was it from the first guy. And then I called another guy, and he's like, yeah, they are. Something's afoot. They want it to happen. And if you're The Rock, he's obviously a football guy. Ballers too. All of a sudden they're incorporating the XFL into that TV show. They're advertising the XFL right now at Disney. I've seen the ads. People have sent them to me. So I think, listen, I'm a business guy. I own my show. We've ventured into America, and it's been the greatest thing ever. We've got a TV network. We're putting together radio stations that could broadcast this league. So I think they're looking. Why do you think I was told this? Out of all the people they could tell, that I could reach a lot of people. So it's coming. I just can't tell you any more than that. That's really all that I know.
Is it a possibility, though, that Tanenbaum and MLSE, the Argonauts, in the Alouettes, they just decided, listen, maybe we'll just buy into the XFL. The XFL is looking potentially to sell up to 45%. We heard all these rumors as well, right? They're looking for new investors. I kind of think that's tied to selling franchises. I know some other people have heard that it's just looking for straight investors without actually purchasing particular markets or teams. So could it be like, all right, maybe we're not going to get the Argos. Maybe we don't get the Alouettes, right? Is it a Tanenbaum? You just want to buy in?
Oh, he's got the money to do it.
Right.
It's interesting you say that, because the specific text, I'd have to go back and look at my phone, but it was like, Tanenbaum's meeting with The Rock this week. That's it, man. I can't tell you any more than that. We could sit and speculate for hours. I don't think Larry at this stage of the game, at his age. But I think the idea of going into business with The Rock, because I heard that from some people in the CFL. You can just look, I've been to enough Board of Governors meetings. I've sat outside, just like the guys covering the NFL meetings this week. I sat outside the boardroom. I could just see the CFL chairman coming out of the meeting going, we're going into business with The Rock, and just being excited about that. That's the private owners. And the community-owned teams don't want to do it. But the fact that it is The Rock, and I just think that's my point about being an entrepreneur, is he wants to build stuff. That's what he did. And building this league is what I think has him interested. I don't know. That doesn't really answer your question. That's going down another road, but
good. I mean, this is all a rabbit hole to some extent, is it not? I mean, there's some where there's smoke, there's fire, but I mean, to some extent, all we can do is speculate. And where can it take us?
Yeah.
So I guess my other question would be, we know, the brand of football, it's football, but the brands are different. 3 downs, 4 downs. Could 4 down football, could it be really supported? In your opinion, I mean, I've read all sorts of response, when people post something and you see, I call them the fanboys or even the diehards, supporters come in and they're like, oh, that's not Canada will never support. What's your feel? Is the 4 down football, is it just one of those things like it's really not our thing? Or is it, there's more support there than people lead on?
I appreciate the question. You're obviously very interested in this. And as a lifelong Canadian here, half a century, I can tell you this. And my parents would roll over in their graves at the concept of going to 4 down football in the CFL. That will never happen. That's not going to happen. Canadian football as an entity should not change. I mean, when that came up when they were talking about a merger, oh my God, were people upset? I get it. I also don't want the CFL to be Blockbuster or Kodak, but it might be. If you don't want to evolve, it's at your own peril. I'm getting to a point. Kids playing minor football in BC and Ontario and maybe certain regions of Canada are playing 4 down football.
Interesting.
From a developmental standpoint, it gives them more downs, playing on American-sized fields in some cases. So it's not like they don't know what it is or what U.S. rules are. Point is this. CFL, to its own peril, isn't going to change. Saskatchewan Roughriders or Hamilton Tiger Cats are always going to play 3 down football in their stadiums on 110-yard fields. That's not to say Canadians would not show up at BC Place Stadium in Vancouver, which holds 60,000, or Rogers Centre in Toronto, which holds 55,000, and watch the XFL 4 downs. They go. And there was a time, Mike, I want to say about 15 years ago, Canadian CFL football ratings were 2 to 3 times higher than the NFL. And I remember in Canada, and I remember saying to the broadcasters on TSN, I said, boy, you better watch out, man. You're hearing footsteps. And the broadcasters for TSN were like, NFL will never overtake the CFL in Canada for viewership. It has by a healthy margin. I want to say it's like 50% more viewers are tuning into the NFL now. It's not about 4 downs or 3 downs. It's about marketing. It's about just as many, probably more Canadians know who Russell Wilson is, and dang sure Josh Allen, than who the quarterback of the Toronto Argonauts is. Because of marketing. It's on our TVs all the time. So my point is they're not anti-4 down. Just certain CFL fans and people are. Is that fair?
Yeah, they just must be the louder segment of the fan base, because I'm not really hearing from the other. So maybe they just are willing to get on their soapbox and speak their mind a little bit more. It's interesting. I'm from Western New York originally. I was born and raised in South Rochester. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So it's not all that far from Buffalo. Although I didn't grow up a Buffalo Bills fan, I have attended my fair share of Bills games. And I must say, there is a good amount of Canadians that are Buffalo Bills fans. And there's a reason why the Bills were holding a home game there for a couple of years up at the old Sky Dome. What is it, Rogers Centre now or whatever it is? So there's a reason there. And I mean, I didn't meet just 1 or 2 every time. There was a good amount of tailgates of just pure Canadians that came down together. So they're season ticket holders, not just coming down for a game. They would talk about how they've been fans for years. So I knew there's a segment, right? They're not only willing just to watch it on TV, they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, drive across the border, come to games, make a day of it, maybe even get hotel rooms if they decide to really make a heck of a day of it where they can't drive back. So I guess my next question is, if the CFL is so dug in. Their brand is, right? We're not going to change 3 downs. If there is somebody like the Argonauts, the Alouettes, that are willing to make the change and play in American League, and that 4-down football is now on Canadian soil, what does that do to the Canadian Football League?
Well, the CFL's hurting as it is. From what I hear from my Eastern Canadian friends, is they call it the Prairie Football League, the PFL. It's only popular on the prairies. So again, their reluctance to change and evolve will be at their own peril. So you should have been open to expansion and tweaking things. So I don't know. Like I say, I'm all for growth. I'm all for expansion. What's best for the game. I don't like the fact that this coach's salary cap's been imposed in the CFL. You can't have more than X amount. They can't make this more money. It's because they're shrinking as a league. So yet a lot of the personnel people in the CFL don't want to see a mix or a morph or a merge because they feel that their brand of football will die. And I'm like, well, okay. Honestly, Mike, the mother lode for me would be if the CFL had become NFL Canada. If the XFL never got off the ground on this next iteration, but we became a farm league, a feeder league for the NFL, then you're ensuring financial stability. You got an influx of talent every year because NFL teams are setting their prospects, and the football people go, no, because our tweener linebackers that are too small for the NFL but too big for this, that'll go the way of the dodo. So I don't know what the answer is.
That NFL feeder league thing may not be as far of a stretch as some people believe it is. We know the XFL already has a information and innovation partnership with the NFL. We know that they also have a deal with the NFL Academy. I know there's not as much of an affiliation with the NFL Academy with the National Football League as people believe, but there's still an affiliation there. Those players from the Academy, is once they complete, as long as they don't sign with an NFL team, have a XFL contract right there. So we know there's enough right there. We know that there's enough ties. So that may not be that far off. And I can see how that's definitely enticing, not only for the XFL and, other people that might want to invest, but Canada. Now they kind of have that NFL tie or that kind of bigger feel. So, yeah, well, I don't think that's as far of a fetch as some think.
I haven't talked about this in a year or two, particularly on these interviews, and I'm glad for the opportunity to talk about it. And if you are a Northeastern guy, Mike, are you a hockey fan? Obviously, you're football first, but are you a hockey fan?
Yeah, I was always a casual fan for years. And then back during this pandemic, I really got into it. So I was always a Rangers fan, but now I tune in. It's rare that I catch a game. I'll watch it on ESPN Plus all the time.
Yeah, well, the reason I ask is that, and obviously you got the Rochester Americans there in the American Hockey League. I don't understand the difference between football and hockey, people. And I was raised a hockey person. My dad worked in the NHL for 26 years. The NHL AHL agreement should be what the NFL, CFL, or XFL agreement should be. They have always used the American Hockey League as a guinea pig to try out new rules. It's always been a developmental league for the NHL, but there's no ratio in the American Hockey League or the NHL for that matter. In the CFL, 40% of the players need to be Canadian, right? And that's like the biggest sticking point of all of Canadian football fans is if we merge with the XFL, what happens to the ratio? Because in the 90s, you don't look old enough to remember, but in the 90s, when we had 8 Canadian teams and 8 U.S. teams, all in the CFL, U.S. antitrust laws wouldn't allow the ratio to be enforced in America. So the U.S. teams were 100% American. And it became a wonderful marketing opportunity and something to watch during the games. How are these teams that are half Canadian going to do against the teams that are all American? It was awesome. And history will show they were about 500 against each other. But now the diehard, again, do you see the American Hockey League having some absurd rule that only like 40% of your players have to be American? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And yet in the CFL, they're still married to that. They're married to that. And they're like, well, if we merged with the XFL, what happens to the ratio? And I'm like, it worked in the 90s that we didn't have it in the US. Why can't we do that again? but they don't want to hear it, man. It's
Well, it sounds like they're just looking for excuses not to change, right? Whether it's like you said, whether it's the community-owned teams, whether it's the fan bases, whatever, they're just not willing to adapt with times. And I get it. I'm not a Canadian. I loosely watch games, and the other day I was watching the BC game. I can't remember who they're playing, but they were at home, and I just saw that they have those curtains, like those tarps that they even use for the Vancouver Whitecaps that play there, right? It's to make it look not as empty. When they renovated that stadium, those curtains were supposed to be really for the soccer team because they knew they weren't going to draw as much. Well, now they're being used for the football team. And I didn't realize that until I'm sitting there watching a game, and I'm like, it's not a good look. You had this bigger arena, and you're only going to show the lower bowl and put these curtains up, but you can kind of still see through the curtains and see the empty seats behind it. So it is what it is. I'm not here to bash the CFL. That's not at all my intention. Obviously, I saw your tweet, and I saw some exchanges, with, people responding to it. And I get it. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's what makes the world go around. But there is something there. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reach out. And I'm so glad that you were willing to come on and just discuss it. Yes, we don't know for a fact, but there's got to be something there. So, Rod, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate you coming on to take the time just to chat it up with me and discuss these possibilities. But,
Well, I hope it goes somewhere. Because I don't have time, to quote Jerry Jones, because I'm a Cowboys fan, I don't have time to have a bad time. If they're just talking idly, I'm not here for that. But this doesn't seem like that. So I appreciate I got your number now, Mike. So maybe we can get together in South Florida. Shoot, it'd be great to go to a game sometime, an XFL game.
I would love that. Yeah. I mean, it would be Orlando for right now, but hey, it's a little bit of a drive. But I used to drive when I lived in Syracuse down to East Rutherford there to watch the Guardians when I was a season ticket holder. So 4 hours, that's nothing. So Orlando's not that far. I would happily meet up with you and catch a game.
Worth it. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. If our listeners, I know that you're all over doing a million things. So for my listeners that may not be aware of you for whatever reason, I've followed you for a little bit on one of my accounts and we just connected on the other account. But if some of our listeners want to be able to follow you and your work, could you just kind of list off everything that you're kind of doing? And do you have a moment, or is that too long? It would take
too long. Well, I don't want to waste your time or your listeners. Just follow me on Twitter at Rod Pedersen, and you'll see that we're on Game Plus TV, WQEE Radio Atlanta, rodpedersen.com, daily website that I update. That gives you an idea. So that's a start. Yeah, thank you for that opportunity. At Rod Pedersen.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that people need to be checking into the people, checking them out, seeing what they're up to, whether it's the players I bring on, whether it's just people like you or just league people. I think it's very important that as a football community, especially this alternative community, that we kind of follow each other a bit. I think we're more alike than we are different. I don't care if it's a Canadian Football League. I don't care if it's the USFL. I don't care if it's the XFL. I think we are these diehard, hardcore fans. Why not? If we just met, in some other circumstance without the badge of the XFL behind me and somebody with the CFL, I think we'd be best of friends because we have a common passion for football. And why not make sure everyone's following each other, or at least looking into each other?
And the people that aren't like us will never understand us, and I don't understand them, because even the fan-controlled football league, I'm sitting at home on a Saturday night watching it on Twitch and loving it. I mean, I don't know what we would do. The game is so great because the people are so great. Everything about it is so great. If you're not into this, what are you into? You know what I mean? So it is important that we stick together. You know what I mean? Like the 9-to-5ers that maybe only follow the NFL. I'm like, you're not a football fan. You're an NFL fan, but you're not a football fan, right? And it's just a wonderful world that just so grateful to be part of it.
And there's even a lot of casuals that are NFL fans. They're really, when you really get into it, it's just that hip thing like you were talking about with people in the Toronto markets or whatever, that new whatever. But it's funny how many people actually are not that knowledgeable of the sport when you get into it. Yeah. So not to bash, I'm a Dolphins fan, which works now for me being in Florida.
It did for the first 3 weeks.
Well, Tua's coming back. Hopefully Tua's okay. I mean, they got to be a little bit more cautious and kind of put some bubble wrap around him sometimes, because he does have that injury prone, that neck to pick him up one way or the other, whether it's his hip in college or now the slew of injuries he's had. But again, I appreciate you chatting it up. I've had a great time. You know, it's definitely hit me up sometime. I love to meet up when you're down here, even if it's just to grab a drink or a bite. Oh, no, you're recovering.
It's all good. Yeah, that's fine.
Please really look up Rod, because he does a million things. That's why you said you couldn't have mentioned it. People, he has changed his life. He's working on helping people change theirs. So I'm glad I made a slip up, because it gives me a moment just to kind of share that you really need to look into it. He's doing a million things. I know you've had a book out there, maybe 2. You've had a bestseller? Oh, 3. Okay, so please look him up. He's, it was just a little slip there. I didn't think about it for a second. So
you're good, man. I'll have Diet Coke. You have whatever you want. We'll have a big time.
All right. Well, thank you. I'd love to do this again sometime, maybe when we actually have something.
Yes, absolutely. We'll get you over and come on my show when I'm back in South Florida over in Boca. All right, Mike. Appreciate you, man.
Take care. I know this sounds like a cliche, but Rod finding the time to come onto our show and share his knowledge is a real treat. Again, if you are not familiar with him or his work, I recommend visiting his website, rodpedersen.com. That is RODPEDERSEN.com to check out his work. Unfortunately, there has not been any fan line messages for this week. But don't forget, if you have a comment, question, or hot take and would like it to be heard on the show, reach out to the fan line by calling 863-TALK-XFL or 863-825-5935. Doing so, your message could be included in an upcoming episode. All good things must come to an end. This concludes another episode of Player 54 Podcast. As always, I am interested in receiving your feedback. So do not be a stranger. Reach out to let me know your thoughts, and if you do so, your comments might just make it on the show. But before you go, do not forget to subscribe and rate the show on your platform of choice. One last thing. If you're interested in checking out our friends over at Royal Rescheduled by 503 Sports, do not forget to click on the link in the show's description and notes, as well as that sweet code, LETSTALKXFL, for 10% off your purchase. Thank you for tuning in. Till next time, cheers.
Thank you for tuning into today's show. Don't forget to subscribe and rate Player 54 Podcast on your platform of choice. You can follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Player 54 Podcast. Do you have a question or topic you would like to have addressed on the show? Message the show via social media or send an email to player54podcast@gmail.com.